talk to the fourth week of Ask the Attorney series. You know, I have, I, you know, I really pride myself on bringing the smartest and the brightest attorneys to my show, and I'm not gonna fail myself this week either. This week, my guys are so busy that I can only get him in the car. I got him in the car this week. Okay, I'm bringing Mahmoud Faisal Elkhatib. Is that correct, Faisal?
That's good. Mahmoud Faisal Elkhatib. So,
I did that right.
Just kind of get the kha in there,
Khatib. Okay,
Yeah.
okay. So I called him Faisal. Faisal is a commercial attorney with over 26 years experience as a business executive in commercial, residential, and corporate transactions, including real estate, development, consumer products, and manufacturing. Faisal has managed, built, and restructured small and medium-sized private corporations. He has a specialty practice in municipal code enforcement and receivership, managing receiverships for private receivers from appointment to deed. He represents landlords, tenants, property owners, and receivers through the housing court process with a deep understanding of the intricate requirements and patience needed to navigate the process. Whew, man, Faisal, that's a lot,
Wow.
man. So I always had this whole page I got to read off. You guys,
if I knew you were gonna read it, I would have just kind of summarized it into I'm just an attorney.
No, you say what? Just an attorney? No, we gotta hear all this. So this week is so important because with COVID, everything has changed. Everything has magnified. The way we do things has changed. So today we're going to talk about, again, I first want to give a station identification. This is Ed Beavers with Ed Talk, and we're on IntellectualRadio.com. So Faisal, what I want to do is we want to talk about mortgages. We want to talk about modifications, forbearances, foreclosures. All these things are very relevant right now because really because of COVID. When we first had COVID, people got laid off. Okay, people weren't able to pay their bills, and all these companies were offering all these different things,
Right.
and everyone wasn't offering the same thing. And
No.
so I think we had talked about this was it April or May about how you really need to understand what you're signing and what you are agreeing to when you accept these packages. So first I
Right.
want to start off with what was it when the banks give you like 3 months off and they say you don't have to pay for 3 months. What is that pretty much called, like a forbearance?
Yeah, so that's they're doing everyone pretty much is doing forbearances of one type or another, and the forbearance essentially says that you don't have to make a payment for the next 3 months, but then in the fourth month, the 3 months that you missed, you got to pay all of it all at one time, plus the fourth month payment. So essentially, in month 4, you end up with 4 payments you have to pay all at once, right? That is the general idea from a very basic level of what a forbearance is. Now, different banks have done different things. So, with this COVID crisis, the government really kind of stepped up, which it didn't do in the first crisis. If you remember, they bailed out the banks, but they left everybody high and dry.
Right.
Well, this time what they did was they provided Fannie, Freddie, FHA, and HUD Ginnie Mae, essentially any one of the federal lenders who have your loan, essentially, right? They've offered 12-month forbearance, where you call the bank, ask them for your forbearance, and they'll give you 3 months or 6 months at a time for a total of 12 months. At the end of that 12 months, they'll offer you, where you do at that point, you'll do a loan modification, right? So 45 days leading up to that 12th month. So in month 10 or 11, you'll start your application for a loan mod. And what they'll do is they'll take your entire amount that you haven't paid and put it on the back end of the loan. Okay.
Now, is that what all the banks are doing, or are some banks doing little something different?
It's only the governmentally backed loans. Okay. So we're going to get a little confusing here, but essentially, the bank that you're making your payment to is not the one who's keeping your money. So most banks, what they do is they'll give you the money, then they'll turn around and they'll sell the loan to some other entity who collects loans. So in this particular case, probably about 50 to 60% of all mortgages in this country are actually owned by a government entity of some sort. Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, HUD, FHA, Ginnie Mae, etc. Okay? So you could be paying Shell Point or Chase or Wells Fargo or any one of these other entities, but in reality, they're what we call a servicer. They take your money, they take their piece, and they give the majority of it to the person who owns the loan, or the entity, or the organization that actually owns your mortgage, and they're the ones that are making the most money on your mortgage. Okay. So then the next question is, well, how do I know whether I have one of these?
Right.
Right. So the first thing is, call your bank and ask them for the forbearance, right? If you need it, ask for it. The way to check to see if you have it is really go online. So, but you have to check each individual company separately. So the different ones are Freddie Mac, Fannie Mae, the FHA, HUD, Ginnie Mae. Okay, those are really the big five. So what you do is you go to Google or go to any web or whatever. Just Google, right? I hate to push them, right? But I have to push somebody.
Right.
So do a search for Freddie Mac. Look up my loan. Fannie Mae. Look up my loan. Ginnie Mae. Look up my loan. So you do that for all of them, and they have a portal where you put in your information, your social security number, your address, some of your details, they ask specifics, and it'll pop up and say, yes, you're a Freddie Mac loan, or no, you're not a Freddie Mac loan. Once you confirm that you are one of those five, then you can be sure that that the government is requiring the servicer to give you a 12-month forbearance. And you do it in chunks. So you ask for it, they give you 6 months, and then at the 5-month mark, they'll say, hey, do you still have this? Do you still need support? You say yes, and they'll give you an additional 6 months.
So Faisal, that's kind of where we are now. So those people who kind of took it out in April, they're coming up on that. And I've been getting calls, and that's not what the banks are doing. I've been getting calls.
Really?
I've been getting calls. It's not clear. We get all this mail, and I don't know if you know it, but people don't read their mail. I don't know if you knew that, but people don't read their mail.
I heard that, yeah. So we're actually removing mailboxes now as we speak, but that's a whole other conversation.
See, I didn't even know that you got 12 months. So I know the average person doesn't know that you get 12 months. They just know about what they're given at that time. Like they just know about the 6 months.
Gotcha.
I don't think anybody else is really calling in to see, okay, I can get another 6 months. Now, also going back.
So they did that to me, by the way.
Okay.
So I said, hey, I've got, and really the only qualification you need for the forbearance is I have COVID-19 difficulties, right? Part-time, lower hours, lower pay, less, whatever it is, there's no other justification other than COVID-19, right?
Okay.
If anybody remembers the old, when you did for the first financial crisis, when it loan mod, you had to write this whole letter. What is your hardship? My hardship is this. You have to go into detail, and they determine whether your hardship is legit, right? And now it's just, I've got COVID-19, that's done. So when they said to us, we'll give you 3 months forbearance, right, they didn't want to give more. I had to go and look up my own loan myself and empower myself. And once I found out, hey, wait a minute, I'm Freddie Mac, I called them and said, hey, we're a Freddie Mac loan. They're like, oh, yeah, okay, yeah, well, you've got, and I have to keep checking because my mortgage statement comes in and it says, you are 6 months behind. And I'm like, but I'm not a default, I'm on a forbearance. How can I be behind? So the rules that the government issued on these, right? They're the Freddie Mac, Fannie Mae, and all these guys, they're federally backed loans. There's no negative reporting on your credit.
Okay.
You get 6 months. Then if you need another 6 months, you ask for the additional 6 months. It's not COVID. It's just no, I'm trying.
Okay. That's why I have you socially distanced right now.
Right. That's we're on video, right? Socially distanced. You ask for the second 6 months, and they're supposed to give it to you. That includes your interest payments, includes your principal, and includes your taxes, believe it or not, because it's your escrow. But what I would be careful about is insurance. 2 things always pay. Pay your own insurance and pay your homeowners association.
I'm gonna go to that. I have a question in the chat room. I want to get to that, and then I'm gonna go back to the to the escrow part. We have one that says my mortgage company said that they only delay the payment, and then I have to pay it all at the end.
So that's so here's what would end up happening. So 2 things on that, right? First of all, I would immediately do the search to see if you are a Fannie Mae. And you want to put it in the chat on the Facebook if you want, and I would recommend it. Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, FHA, HUD, Ginnie Mae. Those 5. Okay? And they'll talk about what kind of assistance they provide for COVID-19. And in their they talk about if you get to the end of the 12 months, the 12-month forbearance, you have to apply for a loan modification. Okay? So I wouldn't wait till the 12th month. You have to apply for a loan mod. And they said that they would provide you with a loan mod, or they'll put it on the back end, which means the requirements for the loan mod should be pretty low. Now, when you call your bank and talk to them, they're not going to help you. Right?
You hear that? You hear that, folks? I'm interrupting you, Faisal. You hear that, folks? I mean, we're gonna actually have to do our own homework on that. So what Faisal is saying is, don't call the bank. You want to go online and look up your loan, but you can actually call your bank and ask them who the loan is serving. Whether it's a FHA loan, what type of Fannie, Freddie type of loan that is. I mean, you can actually call that lender, ask them that. But as far as the rules for your loan, you should definitely be calling the actual person that owns the loan. So I'm sorry that service.
So when you're doing the loan lookup, you're gonna go to the different websites.
Okay.
And they'll tell you what COVID options that they have.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
But you still have to go through your servicer. So why do I say go look it up first? Because my bank was like, we only do 3 months. But when I found out it's Freddie Mac, I called them like, hey, I should get 6 plus 6. I should get 12. I'm a Freddie Mac. They're like, oh yeah, sorry. Right? So you have to go through them, but this is where knowledge is power. If you have the information as to what you're supposed to get, then you can go in, and when you talk to them, you tell them, hey, I'm a Freddie Mac loan, I'm a Fannie Mae loan, I'm this type of loan. The guidelines say that I qualify. So then they'll provide you with that information. So then they'll give you the forbearance.
So again,
but you're still going to have to pay somewhere, somehow, you have to pay the 12 months, right? So these federal agencies have agreed or have put new guidelines that says that they're going to provide easy loan mod options to put what you owe on the back end of your loan. You'll still pay it, but when you sell the property, or it'll be one more year of payments. Instead of a 30-year, you're now a 31-year.
So another question, Faisal, someone had: what if I don't qualify for the loan modification?
So the way that they've run the guidelines is the qualification is gonna have to have a job and be able to afford to pay your payment, right? So the idea is these 12 months, either we've recovered, the economy's back, like I've gotten a new job, my income is back where it was supposed to be. That is the whole idea of giving the 12 months, is to give you time to find some sort of alternative or save money or figure out some way, some option as to how to move forward. What I anticipate is if you show that you have income to support the payment, right, then you'll start your payments back up again. If you still don't have money to pay for your mortgage payment, you didn't have the money to begin with to pay it anyways. Now we're talking about a whole nother different process, right? Now we're talking about short sales, we're talking about foreclosures, we're talking about how do I get out from underneath this burden or this dilemma, right?
Okay, so that's a good place to break for a moment. Um, um, guess you can call 708-223-8953 to ask Faisal a question directly, or again, you can always put it in the chat. Again, this is Ed Beavers with Ed Talk, and I have Faisal Elkhatib on the line with me today, and we're talking about modifications, foreclosures, um, restructuring, and we're gonna get into a little bit of receivership um, on down the line. So let's move on to the foreclosure.
Escrow? Want to talk about the escrow really quick
Oh,
before we jump?
yes. I'm sorry. Let's go back to the escrow. As far as let's don't talk about that, because I actually did receive some calls about that. Well, one of the questions was, does does the does the mortgage company still pay for the taxes and insurance during these modifications, and also during these forbearances?
So if you have insurance already, like an insurance company, like if you have insurance through at Beavers, right?
Right.
So I've got my insurance through you. You do my insurance. My payment should still, the mortgage company will still pay the insurance payments to the insurance company, right? Um, you have to pay your own HOA, and they will still pay the taxes on your behalf. But what I would just be conscious of, right, is these banks, their job is to make money, right? So their job is not to help you. And so if they feel in any way that there's a lapse in the insurance coverage, or they want to cut and change insurance companies, that is a huge profit center for servicers. And by that, I mean, if your insurance is for the year is $2,000 for your house, single family house, whatever it is, I'm just giving a number, they'll find a way to say that your insurance doesn't qualify, or didn't make a payment or something, or if there's a cancellation of coverage or hasn't been renewed with the same company. What they will do is they will go find you their own insurance, and they call it forced place insurance. And that insurance is double what you normally would pay.
Well, not only that, Faisal, that insurance only covers the bank's interest. So
Correct.
the bank
There's
could
that
care
too as well.
less. The bank could care less what you have in your house, any assets you have. So they don't care about your furniture, your couches. They they care less. All they care is about is their 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 interest, which is the property. If the property burns to the ground, is this coverage going to cover my loan? Okay, so you want to make sure, because I've had people come to me in my office and say, "Well, the mortgage company gave me forced place insurance," and some people have had that for 7 years, and thank the Lord that they did not have, you know, any type of major loss where where they had to get coverage. Faisal, there's another question that came up right here. Which is the better option from a credit perspective, foreclosure or short sale? That's an interesting question. Are you able to answer that question or?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. So a short sale has is both of them have a negative impact on your credit, period. Because both of them require you to miss payments, your mortgage payments. So you're gonna have missed mortgage payments. But the short sale is a resolution of the matter. So the impact, what they say is the impact is less on your credit as opposed to a foreclosure, which has a major impact on your credit, right? Because it's a foreclosure judgment, it's a lawsuit, and it's a money judgment. The short sale is a resolution. It's like they didn't get paid in full, but they'll say it's been settled. So it resolves the matter. So it's a lower impact on your credit. So there's two sides. There's another piece to the short sale and the foreclosure. Short sale resolves the matter relatively quickly. Okay. And if it's done right, you don't owe anything on the mortgage after you sold it. So let's talk about what a short sale is in case people don't know.
Okay.
So you owe $400,000, for example, on the house. Okay. The house is only worth $175. Okay.
Right.
So you sell it for $175. Well, there's a difference between $175 and the $400. That's $225,000 difference, right? Where does that go? The bank eats it, right? So because the bank ate it, you get they're going to ding you on your credit for having to take a loss, right? So that's the way a short sale works. On a foreclosure, you might end up with a judgment for the full 400, and then now they'll come after you for whatever they sold it for at the sheriff's sale. The other difference between the two is the short sale is a shorter timeline. So you're talking about 6 months to a year before beginning to end. And on a foreclosure, on a regular foreclosure, if you did nothing, didn't hire an attorney, you're looking probably about 8 to 12 months, depending on how aggressive the bank is. If you are, so it's my daughter.
I see. Hi, Daddy.
Okay. If you hire an attorney for the foreclosure, and it's a good qualified attorney who knows how to raise defenses and how to defend your case, and can properly help you set up the bank to make their own mistakes, to sue the bank, blah blah blah, you could go up to 5 to 7 years in foreclosure, right? Without making a payment, without paying anything. So but that's going to destroy your credit, right? So It really depends on which direction you want to go, and what's going to make more sense for you financially. For some people, they're like, the credit's blown. I need to stay in this house as long as possible. Others are like, I can fix this. Let me get out and do something else.
So let's talk about, I'm a buyer now, and I want to buy a house, and people are always saying, you know what, I'm gonna buy this property on a short sale. But what I found is that sometimes it takes a little longer. They go back and forth, and sometimes purchasing a short sale is not always the best unless you have time and you're not trying to move into that property right away, because it's going to take longer. So on the back side, on your side, what are you actually doing with the bank? What's your conversation you're having with the seller and their bank when, so say you actually have you're on the you're on the seller side now, and your seller wants to sell their property, but they want they want to sell it in a short sale. What are you saying to your client, and what's the conversation with the bank that you're having on behalf of your client?
Good questions. All right. So really, the biggest part about a short sale is patience, because it takes a long time. Banks are intentionally understaffed. The people that they have running doing these things are intentionally underqualified. and don't have the resources they need. So on a short sale, it's going to take a little bit of time to get the short sale approved. Figure anywhere between 3 to 6, which I said it takes about a year. From the moment you get it listed, to get a contract, negotiate with the bank, it could take anywhere between 6 months to a year to finalize a short sale. So my conversation with the seller is be patient, right? The good news is you're not making any payments while you're in the house. Figure out where you're going to land, and it's kind of very stressful because you don't know when we're going to close, when we're going to get approval. So usually you have about a 60-day window from when you get the approval to when you close. So you're coming close to approval. At that point, you've got 60 days to find a new place and to move out. On the buyer side, my advice to the buyer is the same: patience, right? The benefit of the short sales, you're acquiring a property below market value. So even though the banks usually have a inflated idea of what they think the property is worth, you're still going to acquire a property for about 20% below market, which is a great thing for a buyer if you have the patience and don't need to dive into a property immediately, right? I think that answers your question.
So thank you. What about, so another question we have here, what about a deed in lieu of foreclosure? Does it have the same effect as the foreclosure or the short sale? What's the difference?
That's a good question. So first of all, a deed in lieu is where you're telling the bank, take the property, I'm done, right? So their bank is agreeing to take the property, they won't foreclose, and they're going to take control of the entire property. And it really depends on the type of property. It depends on the value of the property, and it depends on the banks. Some banks are easy to do, or servicers will do this deed in lieu. Others, we found out, so early on in the foreclosure crisis of 2008, short sales were much easier, right? They were getting them through. They were, all the way probably up until maybe 2016, 2017. And then 2017, something flipped and short sales became very, very hard. We figured out what it was. Servicers, remember, they're the ones in between you and the bank. Servicers found a whole new profit center where they would take these properties themselves on behalf of the bank, and they would do the rehabs and they would do the construction to fix the property, and then so that way they could sell. And they would overcharge on the construction so that way they can give it to the. So the idea was, well, the property as it sits, it's going to be in bad case. That same $400,000 property, well, it's foreclosure and blah, 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 and the person that left trashed it, so it's really worth a lot less. So they'll put in $200,000 or $250,000. They really put in maybe half that or a quarter of that, charge the bank this massive amount. And then they're like, oh, the idea is they're selling the bank that we can sell it for a lot more money as a finished rehab property later. So the servicers got into the game of rehabbing and flipping.
Okay. And we're going to move on to that. I was going to have had one more question about foreclosure, and we're gonna kind of transition. So I'm an owner of a property. You know what? I just can't afford this property. Is it best to kind of wait to see what the bank's gonna do? Sometimes they take them forever to. I mean, I've heard different things. I've heard people say, you know what? Just wait it out, stack your cash. By the time your credit's already shot, and just wait. And then at that point, just move and try to find somewhere. What's your thought about the? I know. I don't want you to give it. Yeah. I don't want you to give your opinion about people, trying to stay in a property that they know they can't afford. I just feel like you should kind of walk away as early as possible. I don't think you should wait it out, but that's just my thought.
So it's interesting. So I think I don't know if my opinion would surprise you, but my opinion is I don't mind if the banks take a hit, right? Let them take the hit. I think in my opinion, right? If you listen, my foreclosure on my house was 9 years. 9 years. And I say that with pride. Didn't make any payments, didn't take a hit in the end. By the time I was done, my credit was like a 750 because everything related to the foreclosure had fallen off my credit because the default was 7 years, because of the 7-year window. So I think that a person who is in the house as long as humanly possible and saving their cash and not paying their mortgage, all props to them, because they're doing it because they have to, right? If you could afford to pay your mortgage and stay in a stable house and pay that, then you would do it. People are doing that because they have to, right? So, and that's just my personal opinion, right? But that comes at a price, right? Your credit's going to be shot for longer. You're going to be unstable for a longer period of time. You're always wondering what's going to happen. The stress, the anxiety, all of that plays a part, right? Those can't be discounted. Those are huge things that can actually drain a person. So for me, once I finally got rid of that house, was in a stable home, everything was fine, I'm making my payments, I'm good, my world was less stressful, right? It was better, health-wise, mentally, emotionally. You can't discount those things. And I strongly think that if you can't afford it, then take advantage. The clients that I've had, we've represented thousands of clients in foreclosure. The ones who were always the most successful were the ones who did it strategically, right? They saved their cash. They hoarded their cash. Like, not just save, they hoarded their cash to make sure they're ready to go. Took care of everything. They cleaned up their credit. They had to file bankruptcy. They took care of their lives financially while their mortgage was not why they didn't have to worry about a mortgage payment. And then when they finally came out of it, they had enough money for a down payment for their rent, or they had enough money for a down payment to buy, or maybe they were the ones that were in trouble, but the husband was fine, or the husband was the one that had the financial, but the wife had the job and she could have good credit. So every circumstance is a little bit different, but there are options available. So the question is, it's really about what you can handle. If you've got the stomach for the fight, then get your life in order. Financially, get your self, save the cash, and figure out what your next move is going to be. But ultimately, it does come to an end, right?
Right. It's going to be
clients, right? The clients were the ones who had the worst outcome, or the ones who didn't recognize that there came an end. It was going to come to an end, and they didn't plan for it. Yeah.
So next question is, so we have people looking in from all across the country. I'm licensed in several different states. So one of the questions was, does it really depend on the state laws pertaining to the foreclosure process, or is it similar in most of the states? What's your thought?
That's a great question. So Illinois is a judicial state, which means in order for the bank to take your house, they have to file a foreclosure action in court. That court process, by nature, just creates a much longer timeline, right? Other states are what we call deed states, right? Where they don't have to file foreclosure. They can go straight to deed. California is one of those. Some states have both, where the bank can choose to file the foreclosure, or they can choose to go straight to deed. So it really depends on the type of state that you're in as to what your foreclosure options are.
So straight to deed, what does that mean?
What that means is they don't have to file a formal action. They can, and I don't know the process because I'm not in those states, right? But what the concept is, instead of having to go to court in front of a judge, plead their case, file the motion, do all the things they do, get a judgment, go to sheriff's sale, they can go straight to a sheriff's sale.
Okay.
Or they go straight to a sheriff's deed. So they issue a sale of the property, and someone bids on it, and they take it. They take the deed that way.
So it seems like
they just themselves take it to deed.
So it seems like it's closer to an eviction type process. The deed sounds like it's a closer meaning.
It's a much faster
closer meaning as
process.
in time. Yeah, closer
right.
as in time.
From a time perspective, yeah.
Okay. And okay. And for all my Georgia's folks, Attorney Dawson out of Georgia said that Georgia is a straight to deed deed state. So just so you,
Right.
ladies and gentlemen who are in Georgia, always, um, always appreciate other counselors coming on the line, asking questions, and it always helps. So I'm gonna I'm gonna go to one of your other specialties, and that's municipal code enforcements and
Right.
receiverships. And
Gotcha.
I know you love this,
I do.
because I just feel like we the I just feel like the average person doesn't know what they don't know, and if they actually knew about receiverships, they would learn more and go out and find more about it because it can actually benefit the average person. So yeah, we all know about foreclosures. We know people that have actually have actually been in foreclosures. We actually walk down our blocks and we see these empty houses, and then we see all of a sudden it's sold to a new owner, and you're like, man, what happened? Right? So this is something that the average person doesn't have to be a big bank that can actually find these houses that are distressed. Most times, the average person, the average buyer or even rehabber is like the third person in the process. So someone buys it for $5,000, they sell it without even touching it, right? Now the next person maybe does a half refi, and then it finally gets to us, and now we're buying it overpriced. When we've had three other people that where we actually could have been the person that bought it for the $5,000, but we just don't know how to get there. So I said all that to say I'm gonna give it back to you, Faisal, to kind of walk us through. Of course, you can't do it everything because we only have about 10, 15 minutes left. But I want you to kind of talk about that process, or what it is actually as well.
Yeah. Um, so receivership. We'll start with receivership. So receivership is essentially where when an owner fails to actually fix their property or maintain their property in the way that it's supposed to be, the city of Chicago or any municipality in the state of Illinois, because it's an Illinois statute, has the right to uh, appoint someone to step in and take control of the property and fix the issues that are creating a hazard. Okay. So, for example, if the porch isn't being fixed and the owner's like, well, I'm not going to fix it, or doesn't show up, or won't do what's supposed to be done, and after a period of time, the city will be like, look, we need to get this done because it's dangerous and hazardous conditions. We need to fix this. And so they'll appoint a receiver to go in and fix the porch. Now, when that receiver fixes the porch, the receiver is going to have to get paid because the receiver's spending their own money. Well, the owner's not going to pay because if they would have paid, they would have paid their own guy.
Right.
The court's not going to pay because the court doesn't have any money. So instead, what they give is they give the receiver a super priority lien that takes precedence over all other people, right? More than the bank. The only one it doesn't take precedence over is the taxes, real estate taxes. So what's the benefit of this, right? So in some cases, people have become receivers to do little odds and ends and fix things for people where the banks are involved. So then the bank's like, okay, well, the banks usually pay off the receiver and gives an opportunity for the receiver to make some money on the interest or make some money on the receiver's fees. So there's an opportunity there, right? The other opportunity is the receiver then can actually foreclose themselves and take control of the property and take ownership of property for a lot less than what you normally would buy the property for. So it essentially gives you access to property at almost 10 to 20, 25 cents on the dollar. And you got to depend on where you're at. For me, from a moral perspective, we don't touch properties. My clients really don't get involved with properties that are owner occupied, for one. Because obviously that's the idea is not to take property away from people who own them, right? The idea is to fix the properties that are abandoned or vacant or have issues, right?
And which Chicago has plenty of those.
Yeah, but there's a few. Yes, there's a few, and there's a whole underlying very racist policy as to why it's structured the way it is.
Right.
I mean, I can go into this is an entire podcast on its own, right? As to why it is the way it is. But the biggest problem that most people have in receivership is how to address the taxes. Because the taxes, especially in a vacant building, could be 5, 7, 8 years gone from unpaid taxes. That all has to be paid and rectified as part of the receivership process. So that's why it's very critical. So when you're acquiring a property, you know what you're into it for.
So when you talk, let's go into the taxes and tax sales. So would you think that we think is if I'm an investor and I have cash and I'm looking someplace to put this in real estate, would it be in your opinion to go by taxes at a tax sale, or would it be as would it be better to go into some type of receivership deal?
That's a very good question. So a couple issues. The first one is so Cook County specifically, this is why I say there's a very racist agenda here, right? So the Cook County has a requirement that if you go by the way it works is the taxes are sold for 2017, right? They didn't pay the 2017 taxes. They're due in 2018 because they're in arrears. Long story short, someone goes and buys the 2017 taxes. In order to take it to deed, I got to pay 17, 18, 19. I got to pay all the years going forward, right? Until I finally get to deed. That's how it's supposed to work in Illinois. Cook County, though, is what they call a double tax sale state. So you go and you buy the taxes for the tax year that haven't been paid. So I go and buy 2017, okay? Once I bought 2017, there's a second tax sale price that I got to hit, which is not only do I got to pay everything forward, I got to pay everything backward, right?
Mm-hmm.
In the rest of the counties in Illinois, once you pay forward, you only got to pay forward. You don't got to pay back. So what happens now is you got all these properties that are vacant and abandoned, that have been on the tax sales over and over again, that haven't been paid, that haven't been dealt with. Okay, no one's paid the taxes. And so now what's owed is like 12 years of taxes.
Okay.
All right. So now you got to pay all 12 years. Well, 12 years of taxes at $3,000 a month it's like $36,000 a year. If it's $5,000 a month, $5,000 a year, 5 times 10, that's $50,000 on a broken up building that's vacant and abandoned that might be only worth 10 or 12 grand, right? So the biggest problem this exists is in the South and the West side.
Okay.
Which means in Black neighborhoods, there's intentionally set up a tax system to prevent bringing those properties back on the tax roll. Who's going to pay $50,000 in taxes for a property that's worth 12? Nobody. So those properties just keep sitting and they get worse and worse. So then they came up with the idea of the scavenger sale. They're like, okay, well, we've got the scavenger sale, which is, you know what? They'll take 7 years or 5 years of taxes and you'll buy them for $500. So I buy the scavenger sale taxes and then I got to pay every year after the scavenger sale. So if I buy, for example, 05 through 2017, I paid $1,000 for that. Great. Those all are worth $1,000. And then if I got to pay 17 forward, now it makes more sense. That might be viable. Okay. Well, now you have the land bank. The land bank is buying every single scavenger sale at full price. So the scavenger sale has eliminated the ability to bring those, what we call zombie properties, back into the tax rolls. Okay. And we call them zombie because they have no head. The bank doesn't want it. The tax buyer doesn't want it. The owner doesn't want it. The city can't do anything with it. Nobody does anything with it. And that's why you end up with thousands and thousands of properties being demolished and huge vacant land in the middle of the South and the West side of Chicago. So that was a long discussion about taxes.
Man, Faisal, this could be like a 3-hour podcast. I think I might have to bring you back and just talk about that. You know what I mean? This is deep, man. Again, this is Ed Beavers with Air Talk, and we have Faisal Elkhatib, and we are talking about mortgages, foreclosures, and modifications. You can call us at 708-223-8953. So Faisal, tell me how would you like a client to reach you? What is it? What how would
Good
how would they reach
question.
you?
So you can give them our email address and our phone number.
Okay.
So I'll give it to you now. It's 312-775-0980. Again, that's 312-775-0980. And when you call in, you'll just say you're looking for legal services and assistance, a new client, whatever the case may be. And then someone will take your call and get all the information from you.
So, and what's the specialty? So they kind of know who who would you like? What's the specialty? Especially is all things real estate. Should I say like
my
that,
specialty?
Your specialty?
Yeah, my specialty. So we do foreclosure defense work. We sue banks for violations when they make mistakes and errors and stuff. We do building code violations and real estate transactions. And the other big thing that we've been doing now is using COVID for commercial tenants. So if you have an office or a restaurant or just any commercial business where you can't stay in business, you want to close up shop, we've been helping tenants break out of their leases.
Okay, and I'm talking about that really quickly. The rent where the landlord is trying to kick you out. How is that going right? What if I'm a tenant, am I and I was actually affected by COVID? How would you defend me? How could you help me to stay in my house?
Gotcha. So first of all, if you can afford to pay your rent, because landlords they've got their own mortgage payments, their own issues, right? That's their lifeline. Both as a tenant and as a landlord, I get both sides. But if you can't afford it, there is a moratorium right now on residential evictions in Illinois. So they can't file an eviction against you in Illinois if you're a residential tenant. The CDC also has issued its own freeze preventing people from being evicted from their homes or being evicted from tenants, right? So we're using those two things are ways to prevent the eviction from having place. If an eviction is filed against you, call a defense attorney, landlord tenant, or tenant attorney immediately because they've clearly violated the Illinois moratorium and they violated CDC guidelines. For a commercial tenant, it's a little bit different. Okay, for a commercial tenant, they can't enforce the eviction, but they can file an eviction against a commercial tenant. But where the power comes in for the commercial tenant is really one to renegotiate their lease, so they're paying too much in their lease and they want to lower the payments, or two, they want to get out of their lease. They're done. They're closing up shop. Business is over. I'm not surviving. There's no point in burning this. But they've got like a 5 or 10 year lease, and landlords historically will come after them for those 5 or 10 years. Oh, you got 3 years left. I'm going to sue you for the 3 years and come after you personally and just destroy you for the next 3 years, right? For all 3 years of your lease payments. COVID-19 and using what we call impossibility and practicality of contract are two ways to break the lease and say, look, it's not feasible for me to operate anymore. I'm shutting down the business. So based on that, we've used those to break leases and get people out from under their lease.
Okay, and so Faisal, thank you for joining us. But we have this last segment that I actually didn't tell you about. It's called it's called no. Why are you laughing? Because you don't know what I'm going to say yet.
I don't know what you're going to say, right?
know the guest. So I'm gonna ask you a couple questions. I'm gonna give you two choices. You have to choose one of the two. Now, this is very funny with the attorney series because most um, attorneys don't follow the rules. Imagine that, right?
That's my team.
Okay, so I'm gonna give you four questions. The first question, not a question, but I'm gonna give you two choices. Oprah or Michelle Obama. Michelle Obama. Smokey Robinson or Barry White.
I don't know. I'm torn.
You torn?
I gotta pick one. Right?
You gotta choose. See what I mean? Attorneys don't follow the rules. The rule is you have to choose one.
I'll go with Barry White.
Barry White. Okay. Aruba or Mexico? Aruba. Okay. Now this is a were you around when you were around here. So President Obama or Harold Washington?
Oh, Harold Washington.
Okay.
All the way. Harold Washington.
And this is the last one, then we're gonna get out of here.
Okay.
Jane Byrne or our current mayor? You remember Jane Byrne?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah. She won because the one before her.
Right. Because Michael Blandick, I believe that was
yes.
Blandick. Yeah. Okay.
Blandick. So there's a whole reason as to why, right? But I would say our current mayor over Jane Byrne.
Okay. Thank you, Faisal. I do appreciate it. Thank you for joining Air Talk. We're on Intellectual Radio. This is Ed Beavers, where I talk about all things financial every week at 5 o'clock Central Time, 6 o'clock Eastern Times. And Faisal, what I always like to end my show, I always like to give the peace sign. So we're gonna end with the peace sign. I want to say peace, Faisal. I do appreciate you being on my show today.
So in Palestine we do this and we get shot. Because it's victory. It's victory and peace.
Well, we're gonna turn it sideways then. We're gonna do peace. Okay. All right, man. Take it easy, Faisal. Thanks a lot.
Take care, brother.
All right.
Thank you so much for having me.
No problem.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
Yep. Yeah. Oh. That's a lot of information, wasn't it?